Okay, good. All right, Mr. Miller, come on. This is not the trial. This affords you an opportunity to get out of jail until your trial date, which is set for the 18th of December at 10 o'clock in our court next door. You understand? You do have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You understand? You do have the right to have your attorney represent you. So, counsel, I'm assuming you're representing Mr. Miller, so we're going to proceed with the bond. Everything that I have just told you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions before we proceed?
No, sir.
Please be aware that if this charge brought against you is dropped, dismissed in all process, if you're found not guilty, you do have the right to have it expunged off of your record, all right? Mr. Brown, I am going to yield to you, sir.
And I will yield to Mr. Bessinger, Your Honor.
Mr. Bessinger, anything that you need to say to me in reference to setting bond on Mr. Miller? This is not Mr. Miller's court date, this is just bond. Anything in reference to the court setting bond, sir?
Yes, sir. I can't blame him for what he's done because I would feel the same way. But we have never met before in life. I have never seen this man before in life. And I understand he is my wife's or girlfriend's uncle, I believe. And I just feel like I shouldn't have been approached the way I did. I mean, I got a knot on my head and in the back of my head, and a couple little cuts on my arm, which is nothing but a bruise and ain't nothing to cry about. But I still feel like if anything, he should have spoke with me like a human being and a man instead of jumping on me while I was in handcuffs and can't defend myself. I mean, I just feel like he's almost a threat to my family, you know, because he jumped on me the way that he done. So, just basically, I feel like it wasn't right.
All right, anything else?
You know.
Mr. Brown, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Counselor, I'm yielding to you.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate it. Mr. Miller's 59 years old. He is a resident of the state of Ohio. He came down here about a week ago. There's been a major crisis in his family. His niece, who is the girlfriend, paramour of the alleged victim in this case, their child in common, his niece, Mr. Bessinger, was victim of some pretty horrific alleged child abuse allegedly performed by Mr. Bessinger. They had a hearing yesterday in the second floor of the courtroom. Mr. Miller was there in the hallway, and deputies transported Mr. Bessinger in front of him. And in a pure bit of spontaneity, my client lost his temper briefly. There was no premeditation involved. It was purely emotional. This has been a horrific time for their family. And these alleged abuses of the child performed by this alleged victim in this case upset him to such a degree that he had a brief emotional lapse, Judge. A brief emotional lapse. We'd asked the court for a personal recognizance bond. This has been traumatic enough for him. He was last arrested. He had a DUI in 2000. He was acquitted of that charge. We'd like permission. He has a 5 a.m. flight that was already scheduled to go back to Ohio tomorrow. He's not going to have any contact with this person again. That's going to be the end of it. We have that court date of the 18th. I'll be requesting a continuance in that date, Judge, to try and get my Rule 5 back, but we're going to proceed to the end in this. I'm representing him 100% through this. Very traumatic thing. Like I said, Judge, it was spontaneous. There was no premeditation. You know, I heard this alleged victim talk about multiple injuries. You know, he's 59 years old. It was, you know, there may have been an unwanted touching involved in this, Judge, Your Honor, but we're going to see this thing through to the end. This is uncharacteristic of Mr. Miller. And Judge, we sincerely ask you for that personal recognizance bond. I think that Mr. Miller deserves it. He's got counsel that's going to ride this thing out to the end with him.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
I empathize in this situation. Honestly, I do. I don't know Mr. Miller. I don't know anything of Mr. Bessinger other than the alleged charges that are against him. I don't know what happened at the hearing. That is not for this court's decision. My job today is to set bond on what we have before us and for me to determine whether or not Mr. Miller should get a personal recognizance or a surety bond. Well, Mr. Miller is not a resident of South Carolina, definitely not a resident of Orangeburg County. I'm not saying he's a flight risk, but he has no ties to this community other than this family thing here going on. I do feel that the court is not going to grant a personal recognizance bond in it. I am not saying that he's a flight risk by setting a surety bond. I just need to have some assurance, other than you, that he's going to be back in court. Bond's going to be set at $500 cash as surety, and now if you feel that struggling about it, you can post a bond for it. Are you going to post your property for it?
Judge, we'll have to discuss that, but I think we're going to be just fine.
I know you will. $500 cash as surety. He's not a resident of South Carolina. I won't put a stipulation that he can't leave the state of South Carolina, so he can go back, but if he doesn't come back, I got my surety in place to make sure that he does. He's not allowed to have any contact with the victim, any members of the victim family. That contact, of course, means no third-party communication, written communication, or telecommunication. Any violation of it, then he sits in jail until the actual court date. You understand that?
Yes.
Any questions from you, sir?
You said $500.
$500 cash or surety.